as I can. So let's get a die good and full of, get a sponge full of dye here, and let's just run all the way down and back. Okay, nice. Now you notice I'm going to make maybe 2, maybe 3 passes. Again, this is the Pro Dye. I'm not going to worry about it pooling. All right, let's hit our edge. Now that some of the dye is out of our sponge, let's hit our edge. It's nice and rounded, so easy to dye. And then we're going to come back. Our English point, good. Now on our back, same thing. Now you're going to think, well, isn't that going to rub off? Not with a Pro Dye. You'll see. All right, we've got that dyed. Let's just make one more pass. Now we're making multiple passes here. First off, we're not worried about the dye going darker. But what I want is a very consistent dye all the way across. That's what that's going to give us. So on a dry day, I may give this maybe 3, maybe 4 hours to dry. On, say, a humid day, really it's best maybe 10 or 12 hours, or say overnight. So let's let that sit right there. Let it dry. We'll come back and add an antique. Now, before we jump over to antique, the belt's dry, ready to go. But antique can be an absolute mess. It's the one part of the process that can be. So what we want to do is we're going to add some tape to the back of our project, or the back of the panel in the project. And this is just painter's tape. We don't need really good adhesive tape here, simply because the antique, it's more of a gel than a paint or a dye. So it's not really going to wick. We just want to keep that off the back of our belt. Going to make that look very clean and very professional. So there we go. Okay, now I'll tape all the way down, and when we get over there, I'll just trim off the ends, and we'll have no issue with that antique wrapping around on us. All right, our belt is dry. Look how consistent that is. Now, it's still a little bit flat. Our top coat is going to make this color pop. But before we go there, we're going to add an antique. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to sink down into my groove lines and the edges of my tooling. Make the belt look a little bit rustic, a little bit antique, but beautiful nonetheless. We're going to use a medium brown. I don't want to go too dark because this is going to darken the belt overall. So, let's take a dauber. It's about the only way to apply this, because this will push the antique down into the areas I need it. So let's take a good bit, and I'm just going to rub that on. We'll get to our edges here in a little bit, but let's rub that on now. I'm going to kind of rub across so it gets stuck in my groove lines. Now let's set that down, run our rag across it. Now I'm going in the direction I'm coming from. I don't want to rub in that direction. But already you can see, starting to sink down in there, starting to look great. Now, I'm going to work my way down the belt, just a small section at a time, wipe away from the direction I'm going. And there's the last, getting that worked right down into those groove lines. Now, I tell you what, this is absolutely the last stop for a rag in my shop. But notice that looks great. Now it's darkened a little bit. One more thing we need to do, let's hit our edges. But with our tape back there, we're really not going to worry about it. But I do want to go with a little bit less antique on my dauber. So I'm going to work this down, and same as the front, as I work it down, I'm going to wipe it off, and let's just double check our front so we don't have any wrap around. Now remember too, anything I use in this video can be found at weaverleathercraft.com, but also too, you can look below for links that'll take you straight to our website. Very nice. Well, that looks great. Let's give that maybe about an hour to dry. Then we'll come back, hit that with a top coat, and that will be gorgeous. All right, I've got my tape off the back of my belt. Look at that. Great. That's not going to rub off on anyone. All right, let's jump over to a finish. Now, this technically is not a sealant. It's going to finish. It will enrich in our dye color and give it a nice light matte gloss. Now, with the leather balm, and this is one of my favorites, no ventilation required, I want to go sparingly. But if I do, then the leather balm is not going to get down in my groove lines and my cuts. So I'm going to go a little bit heavy, but just like the antique, I'm going to work a small section, wipe away from the direction I'm heading, and I'm going to work my way down the entire belt. There we go, and our edges, we'll get our edges just like our antique. Now let's wipe that off. We've gotten this far without streaking. Bless don't streak now. All right, and the last bit on the end there. Now let's take a clean cotton cloth and we're simply going to buff. And you're going to be amazed at the difference here. So let's buff our way down. In fact, we can already tell the difference. Look at that. Is that not gorgeous? My color is rich and I've got a good gloss on that. And buff our way back. You know what? I could not be happier with that.